I thought it might be useful to show you how I use sketchbooks in my art practice. I've always used sketchbooks in one form or another, usually for traveling. When I travel, I like to take a sketchbook with me and paint little pictures of the places that I've been and the things that I've seen. But I've just been starting to use sketchbooks in a different way recently in my own art practice. So that's what I'd like to talk to you about today. I'm going to start with this one, and I'll call this my Playbook. This is a sketchbook that I found. Well, I actually found the book in a charity shop, and it's got lovely thick paper. It's actually a guest book, but when I found it, I thought, yeah, that's got really nice paper, and I just use it for experimenting. When I've been painting, I don't like to waste any paint, and I certainly don't like to put paint down into the waterways. So I try to get as much paint off my brush as possible. And how I do this is, first of all, I will maybe just get out a stencil, and any of the old paint that I'm still, or any of the excess paint that I'm using, I might just stencil some backgrounds. Sometimes I just clean my brush off. I don't know if I've got one here exactly. So this is a page where I've just cleaned the brush straight onto the page. And then I've got a system for, obviously you can't get rid of all the paint on your brush. You do have to put it in water, but I've got a system then for disposing safely of the dirty water. So once I've got these backgrounds down, then I can come and just play on them. So here's a background, and this one I've just drawn or painted a little vase on top. I haven't done anything really with this page. This is a page where I first discovered these kind of negative shapes within my vessels. And from that, I developed a lesson that is in this workshop. So it can really be a useful thing for sparking ideas. So here's one where I've just painted. Obviously, I've cleaned off brushes onto this, and then I've painted some vessels onto it, and then I've got a pen and ink and drawn over top. And you know, they're just ideas that you can then take into your own art practice. Again, drawing over top of things with ink, and what happens if I activate the ink with water. The idea is that these are books that nobody sees. They're not meant to be works of art, but it just gives you some ideas of where you can take your own art. So here you can see I've been using sgraffito, and this is one where I thought, I wonder, I'd quite like to make a cup mask, and I think this is a bottle stencil, and just see what happens if I use these two, a mask and a stencil, and overlap them. And for instance, this is the same cup mask, but playing with it in a different way. So that's just a playbook. And the other really good thing about this book, a book like this, is if you don't feel like making art particularly, then you can just come in here and spend a few minutes, and then you at least feel that you've done something a little bit creative during the day. Sometimes I've come in where I've just got out the felt pens and thought, well, I'll just practice drawing vessel shapes, and I'll practice some pattern making on those shapes, and then I can take some of these ideas into paintings. So that's the playbook. Now the next one I want to show you is one that I've just started recently, and I'm finding it really useful. Now I'm sure that we all collect images on Pinterest and Instagram and so on. They're too confusing. They're not curated in any way, and they're just there. We just sort of store them and flick through them. But by actually taking a little screenshot and printing them out and sticking them in a book, this becomes a really useful reference. Well, it does for me. So for instance, in this one, in fact, for all of them, what I've done is drawn a little thumbnail that gives me the composition. And then I've written about the things that I like about the paintings. And then I've the things that are not what I'm looking for in my own work. So this one by Jessica Fields, I've said that I like her overlapping shapes. I like the objects disappearing off to the side. I like how she's used thick and thin stripes. I love her use of colour, the complementary colours of the oranges and the blues, and the very subtle shades that she's used, even in here and in here. But for me, what I'm not looking forward to in my own work is the it's very neat and very precise. And as much as I love it, it's not something that I enjoy doing. So I wouldn't be taking that aspect of it into my art, but I might look at some of the color combinations and experiment with those. So this one by Tiffany Kingston, what I've done the thumbnail that shows big shapes. But the thing that I've particularly liked on this is her use of, and I imagine that this is sgraffito as well, it's, scratching through, and she's created all sorts of intricate patterns, and that's really enjoyable for me. This one, I've said, she's called Marcy Sadie, and I've enjoyed her very simple composition. It's just a 2/3 and 1/3 structure with one vase of flowers centrally in the middle, so one big shape. But a simple shape like this becomes interesting because of the colours that she's used and the sgraffito technique that she's used to create pattern and texture. So she's got an orange background here with a blue on top, and she's scratched the blue back in all sorts of random pattern making ways to reveal the blue underneath. She's got this kind of texture going on the vase through scratching through, and the same with her background. She's made a really interesting background. Then she's also got quite precise lines scratched through into her blooms and her leaves. So this book becomes a really, really valuable reference for finding out what it is that you like and what you don't. Now, it's not about I'm going to take this painting and now try and recreate it, because it's not about copying somebody else's art, but it is about getting ideas from the art. So, not sure who else I've got here. The last one that I've got here this is not actually a painting, but it's an interior, and this interior is a sideboard, and it's got really interesting vessels. So I've popped this one in here because I like the shape of the vessels, and I like, the vessels are kind of a bit twisted and a bit quirky, and I'm enjoying the patterns that are on them as well. So this can be an idea that I think, well, I'm looking for an interesting shape for one of my vessels in a painting, and I can come back to here. Remember that I've got a book, that's got some references for me. So this is almost like studying in a way, but it's fun studying. It's very enjoyable. Now, the third book I've got that I want to show you, I'm going to call this my project book. It's not random. I've worked on in this book for a particular reason. In 2022, I did the 100-day project. It's something that I've done for a couple of years, and it's something that I really encourage people to join in with, because doing something every day, you'll see your skills really grow and develop. But for my project for 2022, I decided to do 100 days of still life. And these could be as simple as I want, or as complex as I needed them to be. So I decided to take one subject matter and to work on that for 6 days in a row, and then set up another subject matter and work on that for 6 days in a row, but using different techniques and using different materials and media. So pen and wash on this one. Then this one is coloured pencil, something I don't often use, and I took coloured pencil into this as well, but used it in a different way. So here, for instance, I've coloured, and here I've just used cross hatches. So, and this one was a combination of all sorts of different media as well. And the other thing is that it encouraged me to look for different things to do in my still life. So in this series, I was looking at my sewing. I was going to do my sewing machine and a few sewing objects. So pen drawing with a watercolour wash. And this one was a more considered realistic drawing, trying to work out the shading on my my white sewing machine, and then drawing these objects in. But after day 2, I decided that I actually didn't find the sewing machine that interesting. So that went, and for the rest of that week I worked on just using the haberdashery and increasing the amount of haberdashery. So doing those in different ways. Really enjoyed doing the lace here. This one was with Posca pen, and then the last one I was trying to abstract it somewhat, and I've done a little bit of collage here with a dressmaker's pattern, which obviously suited the theme, but tried to abstract it a bit. And it was interesting trying to find different subjects to come up with as well. So this one is blue and white basically, about using collage and so on. So I'm going to jump a bit. This series of work, I started off I thought, well, I'm going to use stencils and a jelly plate and try mono printing. So I did a kind of a week of experimenting with mono printing. So exactly using a mask and a stencil. So a week of that to see if I could come up with different ways of using it. I'm going to just jump to here because I also wanted to say about looking at different things that become the subjects of your still lifes. So this one is a pot of basil and my gardening gloves and trowel, fork and a pot and some seeds. So that was an interesting, just using something different, a different subject. So here was looking at some of the objects in my kitchen drawers and experimenting with different ways of portraying those. So this is what I call, as I said, a project book, and this is a very considered sketchbook. It has a definite purpose. It's not random or playful as such, although obviously I'm still playing. And also you have things like time factors to consider. So a continuous line drawing like this one is going to just take minutes. Whereas this painting here, where I'm experimenting more with impasto textured techniques, has taken longer. And this dotted one took longer, and so did this collage. So it just depends on the amount of time that you have, how you treat all your subjects. So I would really encourage you, if you really want to see a shift in your art practice, to use sketchbooks daily if you can, and you'll find that your skills really improve, and you'll find that you really start to decide what you like doing and what you like to see and how you like to work, and that's where you start to develop as an artist.